That's so cute that they have all that confidence. Like, look at them. That's so beautiful. They have all that confidence, even though they're about to choke in another season. Look at them. Just adorable. Pinch their little cheeks.
Mark Farzetta is a nice guy, and that's the way he would look at it. Mike Sielski is a nice guy. That's the way he looks at it. I'll tell you what most Eagle fans would say. Hold on, let me get this out of my eye. Here's what I think of Jerry Jones. Just a guess the way that most of the Eagle fans would look at it. Do I have the wrong read on that, Sielski? Do you think Eagle fans are taking the, oh, that's cute, Jerry Jones, Mark Farzetta stance on the owner of the Cowboys?
You know, I think more Eagles fans nowadays probably take Farzetta's stance on this, Jody.
What are you, nuts?
Here's why.
Work at WIP, you take calls on the weekend. Are you nuts?
Jody, here's the thing, okay? It's a generational thing. I grew up hating the Cowboys as an Eagles fan because I remembered a little bit of the 70s, tiny bit of the 70s and the 80s, and certainly the 90s when the Cowboys were really good. And the Eagles couldn't win a thing. And it's Troy Aikman, it's Emmitt Smith, and it had been Roger Staubach and America's team. They haven't been that team for a long, long time. So there's a whole generation of Eagles fans who kind of look around, I think, and go, why is everybody worked up about the Cowboys? Yeah, they're good, and yeah, they're popular, but the Eagles have won a Super Bowl and are consistently better over the last 15 to 20 years than the Cowboys are. So why are we supposed to hate them so much?
Yeah, but see, that's why I think you're just woefully wrong. Sorry to say. They're not a threat. They like to think of themselves as a threat. Some obnoxious, over-the-top Cowboy fans want to harken back to 1990 as if they're going to play the 2023 season in 1990. It's not happening.
Well, first of all, the Cowboys in 1990, I think, were only like 9-7. So I think the Eagles would take that.
Whatever year you want to. When Jimmy was the coach, harken back to when Jimmy Johnson.
It's true.
What? Mike McCarthy, not Jimmy Johnson, but some Cowboy fans, including the owner, might make you believe that that's the case.
Yeah, but there are a lot of obnoxious fans of a lot of teams, and it's not the same because those Super Bowls in the early 90s and that domination throughout the 70s aren't as fresh in Eagles fans' minds as they once were. Look, I've talked to, say, Merrill Reese about this, okay? And Merrill has certain feelings about the Cowboys because he remembers when he was a kid in Philadelphia and the Cowboys would just beat the snot out of the Eagles every single year. That doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't. And so the temperature is going to be turned down on the rivalry. The other thing is, I think from a rivalry standpoint, it's always been more intense on the Philadelphia side than it is on the Dallas side, because there are half a dozen to a dozen teams around the league who consider their Cowboys their biggest rival. You know, go up to New York and ask Giants fans, who's your biggest rival? And they'll probably say the Cowboys. Back when Washington had an actual football franchise, people down there used to say, oh, the Cowboys are our biggest rival. San Francisco, oh, the Cowboys are our biggest rival. So it's diluted a little bit from the Texas end of things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's also still being built up, Mike. And Jody, you both know this. Like, the national media loves bolstering the Cowboys simply because everybody cares about the Cowboys. If you hate the Cowboys, you care about the Cowboys. If you love the Cowboys, then obviously, well, you need help. And then also on top of that, you still care about the Cowboys. I grew up in an era where that was on the back end. They were great when I was little, and then they started to really fall by the wayside and kind of started to become a shell of what they once were. So I think people from my generation in particular look at it and go, wait a minute, hold on a second. This is the team we're supposed to be worried about? Because, Mike, to your point, like 20 years, the Cowboys not really being a threat, and the Eagles, through the Andy Reid era, becoming more of a dominant team in the NFC. You tend to look in the rearview mirror at the Cowboys before you look ahead to them and go, oh, you got to be concerned about them, because they just seem every year to find a way to blow it.
Yeah, there's two ways to look at this, Mark. You can look at it from like a practical football standpoint, where you say, how relevant are the Cowboys year to year? How good are they really? And how much does that play into their relevance, right? Like, the New England Patriots are not as relevant now. We can see 3 years after Tom Brady left, as they were when he was there, right? They were almost America's team while Brady was there. And now that he's gone, it's like, oh, okay, well, Bill Belichick, like, okay, great. Mac Jones is still their quarterback, and they don't have any skill position talent, and they're the worst team in the AFC East, so why do we care about them? The Cowboys have something different. They're relevant just by being the Cowboys. They're like the Yankees. They're like the Lakers. TV ratings prove that. Look at ESPN and Fox Sports and the amount of time those shows spend talking about the Cowboys. They clearly still move the needle for all the reasons that we're talking about in terms of, they have a fan base that loves them and they have a lot of fan bases that hate them. My colleague and friend Marcus Hayes has always maintained that the Philadelphia Inquirer and or Daily News should have a Cowboys beat writer, that we should be at every Cowboys game, because there is a segment of the Eagles fan base, to Jody's point, that hates them that much and is interested in them that much. I'm just not sure anymore how big that segment of the Eagles fan base is.
If I'm agreeing with Marcus Hayes, I'm okay with that. The Cowboys still deserve they don't deserve the respect, but when Jerry Jones gets to running his mouth, I think Eagle fans should respond rather than just go, oh, it's just the Cowboys. The Cowboys, cute little team, as far as you said down there in Tech. No, they're the Cowboys. So here's a question I have for you, Mike. Extensions. Johnny and I kicked this around.
I do not need hair extensions, Jody. No.
You could use them. I'm a foregone conclusion. Farzi's got no shot. We're out of that conversation, but that wasn't what I was referring to. I'm talking about contract extensions.
Okay.
Eagle players, there's, I guess, a couple of guys. You got Jalen Dunn, but there's a couple guys that you could talk about as far as an extension. And Hassan Reddick kind of led us into that conversation the other day when he referenced the fact that there's a whole bunch of other guys that are on the same level he is, and they're holding out. So that conversation was rightfully had. When is Nick Sirianni going to get a contract extension?
That's a great question. I would think at some point this season, provided the team gets off to the start that everybody presumes they're going to get off to. We saw this with Andy Reid, for instance. Go back, I guess it was 2001, 2002, where the Eagles kind of finally realized, okay, he's got it. We made the right call. They went from 3-13 to 5-11 to the playoffs, and we're humming along. And Andy did want a little more power, and that differentiates him from Sirianni. But same thing happened with Doug Peterson, right? They gave him an extension after the Super Bowl. So
and that's where the question comes from for me. Peterson won to now Sirianni didn't win the game. I'm not blaming Sirianni for the losses. We could, Mike jumping in the end of the show, we could spend the next hour talking about last year's Super Bowl. We're not going to. Right after Doug won, he got the extension before the next season started. As a matter of fact, it was early August. Where are we now? Early August. It's like, I got right here, August 5th. What's today? August 3rd. So if they're going to match it up, they got to get it done in the next 2 days, Mike Sielski. Do the same thing for Sirianni they did for Doug Peterson. Do you think there's any chance those conversations are being had behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think they probably are. The Eagles tend to keep these things close to the vest. I also think the fact that Peterson won a Super Bowl and Sirianni did it is a factor. I also think the fact that Sirianni has 2 new coordinators on his staff right now. If that were giving the Eagles brass pause about, okay, let's see what he does this season, I could understand that too. But I think Nick's a really good coach, and I think they're probably going to extend him. He seems not to be as craving the sort of power, at least yet, that Andy did and that Chip Kelly absolutely did right out of the chute. So I think there's a few different dynamics at play. I do also think, though, to your point, Jody, that Nick feels much more emboldened naturally because of his personality to speak up and weigh in on things in a way that Doug Peterson did it. Doug almost did it when it was too late, when it came to his coordinators and coaches and some of the changes that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman wanted him to make. By the time Doug was in a position to have some autonomy, he had already kind of given it away. I don't think Nick has that problem. I've heard from people within the organization that Nick speaks up on his own behalf in terms of what he wants. So look, all of those dynamics could be at play. I don't think there's any necessarily any like artificial deadline of, oh, we did it by this date with Doug, so we've got to do it by this date with Nick. I think it'll probably happen, and we'll see when it does happen.
Mike, real quick, I just want to mention your article that came out yesterday regarding Quez Watkins and his status right now with the Eagles. I was reading it. Great piece. Eagles fans should check that out, Inquirer.com, of course. Quez has got that whole, I don't want to use the word diva yet, but he's got that real cocky, arrogant, I'm the best, I can be the best, I'm elite personality down when it comes to a wide receiver. Will the talent catch up to that at some point? How does that work?
Well, I think he's got talent. I just wonder what color the sky is in his world where he's an elite receiver. I want to know what planet he's living on because he did not have an elite season last year. Yes, he had a shoulder sprain in early December. He suffered that in the victory over the Titans. But still, he hasn't been an elite receiver by any definition. And now he's really, in a way, kind of competing and fighting for his job because they brought in someone else to challenge him for that number 3 wide receiver spot. So maybe this is a thing that this is a position that he needs to take. He feels like to get himself fired up and focused for this coming season. And look, the coaches have praised him throughout camp, and who knows, maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks into the season, we'll all be saying, wow, Quez Watkins is back to being the deep threat that everybody hoped he would be, stretching the field, opening things up underneath for Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and et cetera, et cetera. But I got to see it to believe it. And the fact that he's saying, bleep, I'm elite, after, the 5th or 6th training camp practice doesn't exactly fill me with a lot of confidence that he has a realistic perspective on himself in the NFL and on this roster.
There's a fine line between being confident and being cocky. That came off as really cocky to me the other day. Same to Mike Sielski. We'll see how it plays itself out. All right, last question before we let you run. There are certain tenets that Eagle fans have, and they love the blitz. They love coming with extras to try and get their quarterback. Just ask Jonathan Gannon about that. And this is just my read from doing sports talk here in town 30 plus years. They seem to have an affinity for the screen pass, that they just seem to like that. Donovan was really good. Brian Westbrook was phenomenal at it. And he's an Eagle fave over the past 25, 30 years. They're working on it in camp a lot, that they're trying to find ways to pass the ball to the running back. Will the screen game be back here in Philadelphia, much to the positive response of the Philadelphia sports fan?
I think there's a chance that it will, Jody. DeAndre Swift can catch the ball out of the backfield. Kenny Gainwell isn't bad. He's done a pretty good job of catching passes over the last couple of years. And I think you're right. And I think one of the reasons that the Eagles like it as a play and a strategy, and one of the reasons that fans around here really like it, is it's been a successful play and strategy for this team for a long, long time. As you said, Donovan McNabb was very good at it. Brian Westbrook, Correll Buckhalter, Deuce Staley, they all could catch the ball out of the backfield, particularly in the screen game with Westbrook and Buckhalter. And the Eagles have had backs over the years who were really good at it. The other reason I think people like it and the Eagles like it is they consider it an extension of the running game. If the Eagles aren't going to turn around and just hand the ball off to a back, well, get it into his hands in the screen game. It allows the absolute strength of their offense, their offensive line, to work. They love to see Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson get out in space and, plow defensive backs and linebackers. It's worked for this team for a long, long time. And if Sirianni and Brian Johnson can incorporate it more in their repertoire of plays, it's all to the good. I mean, it takes pressure off of Jalen Hurts. It causes teams to hesitate if they're going to blitz him, because then Hurts can just dump the ball off. And before you know it, you've got this long developing play that's picking up 10, 15, 20 yards. So if they can get it to work, it's a huge part of their offense, could be a huge part of their offense. And they should be working on it because it's been effective for them for a long time.
It was the perfect hedge for Andy Reid because everyone screamed run-pass ratio. Well, you guys consider screen passes runs. I consider screen passes as passes. So stop with the run-pass ratio. So good stuff. Mike, we appreciate you making the effort to try and get on. Technical difficulties. Thank you very much for attempting earlier. I blame McDonald because I didn't follow what the.
I blame anybody who talks about himself in the third person, Jody. Come on.
Yeah, oh, that's me. McDonald apologizes for that.
Sielski likes Elaine.
Mike, thanks much. I know you and I got a Saturday show together coming up soon. Looking forward to that. Thanks.
Me too, Jody. Thanks, guys. Good to see you both.
So, yeah, Sielski here with us on Birds 365. And again, yes, we have private chat here on the site that I never